All right, so you wanted to take a deep dive into Christina Carlin Craft's story. And I gotta say, after going through everything you sent over, wow, it's a lot more than those headlines that just called her a Playboy model. You know,
It really is.
yeah, way more to unpack there.
It's a wild ride, and we're looking at some of those excerpts from the Law and Crime Network video on YouTube.
I was just trying, just to refresh everyone's memory.
Okay, great. So, for me, the thing that stuck out right away was this crazy contrast, between Christina's background. She's from Ardmore,
Yeah.
a small town. Everyone knows each other. And then she ends up chasing this modeling dream in New York City. Like, talk about a leap.
Huge. And it's not like she was totally alone in this, right? She had Alex, her fiance. He was already successful in the city, a banker. So I imagine they were building a pretty great life together. But then there's this whole other side to the story, the Playboy world, the modeling. Did that cause any friction, you think, between them?
It's really hard to say for sure, but you can't ignore that whole scene, right? The pressures, what it takes to make it, especially when you're ambitious, like Christina clearly was. And she'd gotten a taste of success early on. Like back in 2009, she was named Cyber Girl of the Week by Playboy, which that's a big deal.
Oh, yeah.
That gets you noticed, parties with Hefner, the whole nine yards.
I didn't realize there was so much to it, honestly. I thought it was just the, the centerfolds. So what did Cyber Girl of the Week even mean for her career back then? Like, was that a stepping stone to something bigger?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it definitely boosted her profile. But for Christina, it sounds like that wasn't the end game. She wanted to be a playmate, which in that world, it's like the ultimate, right?
Yeah, the gold standard.
Exactly. And it's easy to see how someone could get caught up in that whole thing, needing that validation, especially in an industry that's all about image.
It's kind of heartbreaking, though, because you mentioned this in your notes, how brutal that world can be, especially when it comes to age.
Yeah.
So at 26, was she already considered old by their standards?
Unfortunately, yeah. And that's its own tragedy, isn't it? You're finally finding your footing, your confidence, and then suddenly you're told your time is up.
Wow.
That does something to you, not just your career, but how you see yourself. All that pressure to be young, to be beautiful. It's a lot to carry.
No wonder she might have felt lost, like caught between this glamorous world and then the reality of it all. And then there's that whole thing from 2016, right?
Yeah.
A few years before her murder, there was that bar fight in New York. What happened there?
Yeah. So the article you sent, the one from the Times, it mentions she was out with a friend and things got out of hand with the manager, something about the bill, and it ended with Christina getting arrested for assault. Yeah. Now, we only have like one side of the story, and it doesn't sound like she was hurt badly or anything, but it makes you wonder, was this just a one-time thing, fueled by alcohol? Or was there more going on beneath the surface?
That's what I was thinking too, because it does add this whole other layer to her story, right? It's like
Yeah.
behind those photo shoots, the parties, who knows what was really going on?
Exactly. A good reminder that things aren't always what they seem, especially in a world that's all about appearances.
For sure. Makes you wonder what was really happening in those days leading up to her death. And speaking of which, just 4 days before her murder, she had another experience that's just unsettling. Her apartment was robbed. What could you tell us about that night?
So this robbery, it's really unsettling, and it adds this whole other layer to the story, doesn't it? Because you noted that Christina suspected that she might have been drugged. So imagine waking up, you're disoriented, your home's been violated, valuables are missing, and you have this awful feeling that someone took advantage of you, that someone was in your space. Awful.
And these weren't just any valuables. These were designer bags, jewelry, the kinds of things that represent a certain lifestyle, right?
Absolutely. And I think that makes you wonder if it was random or if she was targeted because of the world she was involved in,
Right.
her lifestyle.
Yeah.
It's very possible.
It's like you're still trying to wrap your head around the robbery, and then just days later, she's found murdered in her own apartment.
Yeah, it's a scary turn of events for sure. And the details, like from that Law and Crime Network video, they're brutal. They said she had 22 broken bones just in her face. And then there's the strangulation. This wasn't just some random attack. This was personal.
It's chilling,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely chilling, to think about that level of rage. And, to make matters even worse, her fiance, Alex, he was the one who found her, well, not exactly found her, but he couldn't get into the apartment and he knew something was wrong. I can't imagine that feeling.
Just awful. And of course the police looked at him, but they were able to clear him pretty quickly. But that still leaves them with this huge question, right? Who would want Christina dead? And why be so violent about it?
Right, exactly. It's a real mystery. And this is where that security footage comes in, right?
Yeah.
From the night she died. It showed Christina with this unidentified man just hours before. So what's the deal there?
That footage changed everything for the investigation. Because you see them together, and they're not fighting. It looks like they're getting along.
So not a random encounter at all then?
Nope. And we know this because the Uber driver, the one who picked them up in Center City, he told police they were being affectionate, like a couple, totally different from the violence that happened later.
So then what could have happened in those missing hours to make things escalate so badly?
That's the million-dollar question. And at first, the police were completely focused on finding Andre Melton, the guy from the robbery. They thought maybe he came back or things got out of hand a second time. But then they get this tip that just changes everything.
This is from the roommate at the psychiatric facility, right? Where Jonathan had been bragging about strangling a woman.
Yeah. So this roommate comes forward and he tells the police that Jonathan had been bragging about the feeling of strangulation, how he liked feeling the last breath leave their body.
That's just horrifying. To think someone could say something like that.
It is. And they were so close to catching him, too.
What do you mean?
They finally had a lead on the guy from the security footage, but it turns out he was admitted to the facility as a John Doe. But get this, on the day of Christina's funeral, they catch a break.
What happened?
A family member sees Jonathan's picture on the news and calls the police. They finally have a name to go with the face, Jonathan Wesley Harris. And it gets worse. They find out he has a criminal record. He had just gotten out of prison 5 weeks before Christina's murder on robbery and drug charges.
So they have a name, they have a face, they even have a possible motive. But where is he? Did they find him?
They did, but it took some serious detective work. Turns out he was on a bus to Pittsburgh.
On a bus to Pittsburgh. They're lucky they found him at all.
Right. It's like finding a needle in a haystack. So they contact the authorities in Pittsburgh, and get this, they put together this whole fugitive task force just to get him.
Wow, no kidding. That's serious, like something out of a movie.
I know, right? Totally. So the bus gets to the station, people are getting off, and there he is, the third one off, Jonathan Wesley Harris. They arrested him on the spot.
That must have been a huge relief for everyone, especially Christina's family and friends. But okay, so they've got him, now they need to get some answers.
Exactly. And at first, Jonathan's trying to spin things his way. He tells this whole story about a drug deal gone bad, says he met Christina at a bar, one thing led to another, and he gave her some cocaine.
Classic blaming the victim, right? Especially with all the media attention on her, the whole party girl angle.
Exactly. And he's saying they went back to her place, she wouldn't pay for the drugs, they fought, and, well, you know the rest. He's trying to make her look bad, like it was her fault because of her lifestyle.
But his story had a big hole in it, didn't it? What about the toxicology report?
Exactly. That's what did him in. The autopsy shows she didn't have any cocaine in her system, just alcohol. And remember, her fiancé, Alex, said she never did cocaine. So Jonathan's story falls apart.
So they confront him with this, and what happens? Does he break?
He does. It all finally catches up to him, the lies, everything. Jonathan confesses.
Okay, so what really happened that night, according to him?
He admits that they argued. It was about the drug money, and when Christina tried to run, he tied her up. He even said she managed to dial 9 on her phone before he stopped her. Think about how scared she must have been.
That's awful. Just awful, I can't imagine.
And he says, yeah, there was a fight. He tied her up, but he only choked her because he panicked. Didn't mean to kill her, didn't know what else to do. But, I mean, come on, with all those injuries, the broken bones, the strangulation, it's hard to believe it was an accident.
Yeah, you have to wonder if it was really just panic, like he said, or something more, something worse. Especially after what his roommate said about him liking to strangle people. The jury didn't buy it either, right?
Not at all. They heard everything, all the evidence, and they found him guilty. First-degree murder, kidnapping, having a weapon, and strangulation. He got life in prison, no parole, plus another 22.5 to 45 years on top of that.
Wow. Well, at least there's some justice. What about the other guy, Andre Melton, the one who robbed her apartment?
They got him, too. Used security footage, credit card records, the whole 9 yards. He was convicted for his part in everything that led up to Christina's death.
At least a little bit of comfort, knowing that they were both held accountable. Even if it won't bring Christina back. You have to think about her family, everyone who loved her, going through all of that.
It's a reminder that behind every story, especially these tragic ones, there are real people whose lives are changed forever. Christina's life was cut way too short, but she was more than just what happened to her. She was loved, she had dreams, you know. It's important to remember that.
Absolutely. This whole deep dive into Christina Carlin Craft's story has been intense. It really makes you think about how looks can be deceiving, how easily things can go wrong, and that you can't ever really let your guard down, even in places you think are safe. And it makes you think about all the pressure on women to be young, to be beautiful. We have to look deeper, see the person, not just the image. Hopefully, by getting to the truth, we can honor Christina's memory and maybe even stop something like this from happening again.
I hope so too.